All right, everybody. Welcome to our Phase 2 RegAv webinar. Um, I think people are still pouring in here at this moment as we get started on our webinar. So I'm just going to do a quick intro before we get into the content as people are pouring in. So welcome again. This is our second RegAv ACE webinar. We have an ongoing series going, so we will be doing these as we roll out new features in ACE as we continue with development there. My name is Victoria Anderson. I'm going to be guiding you through our content today, and we also have a couple other staff members, Cheryl Clapp and Greg Johnson, on here, who are going to be helping answering questions and leading our Q&A at the end of our content today. All of our sessions are recorded and will be placed on our help desk. So if you miss a session or would like to go back and rewatch, those are where you can find those. We're also putting a ton of documentation out, including release notes that are going to be documenting the changes we're making, as well as a lot of help documents that can be found on our help desk as well. However, if you're not finding what you're needing, please reach out to support and we can help you. I am going to leave you guys all on mute during the presentation here, just so we can eliminate background noise until the end, and then we'll open up for a Q&A and unmute you all. Last time we had some mute issues, so hopefully we won't have that this time. So please save your questions at the end, write them down, or put them into the chat window, and Cheryl and Greg are probably going to be answering some of those as the presentation is going. All right, so it looks like we have pretty much everyone here, so let's go ahead and jump in. So today we're going to be focusing on our need to create some restriction tools for the 7 and 7 regulations, and we actually created a whole new screen and menu item for that. So we're going to start by going to Setup, and you'll notice a new space here called Compliance. We're going to be spending most of our session today exploring the fields in this screen, what they mean, and how they can be used to restrict omnichannel communication within a period of time determined by your agency, and what happens when the criteria is met within the settings in ACE, okay? The first thing I do want to mention before we jump into the new fields is that we did move some of the fields that we showed in our Phase 1 webinar, and that's going to be these three at the top: our default itemization description, validation notice letter buffer, and validation notice email buffer. We moved these from the setup system menu, so please note that. We aren't going to go over these today since we've already covered them, and we have lots of other content to go over. So if you would like to learn more about these fields, you can check out our Phase 1 webinar that's recorded on the help desk for those. Okay, so let's jump into this next area called Contact Window. This is going to be one of the new features here. We're going to go through each of these fields and learn about what they mean and what they do. What's important to know about this contact window, so we have some defaults in here, but it's important to know that for this feature to be turned on, that this box down here at the bottom is checked. It's called maximum in contact window. You can see that right now it's set to true. So right now, ACE is considering these fields right now. So please make sure that you have that turned on if you'd like to use this feature. All right, so let's go to this first field here called Use Bundle Counts. When this is enabled, omnichannel communication will be restricted when the combined contacts for all accounts in the bundle are met by the thresholds below. When this is disabled, omnichannel communication will be restricted on a single account when the thresholds below are reached. This means that communication can continue with other accounts in the bundle. The majority of you are probably going to want to have this turned on unless you are working accounts by themselves. All right, let's go to this next field here called Number of Days. This defines the contact window in number of days. In other words, how many days are included in the check and calculation of consumer communications. The next field here is called Maximum Contact Attempts. The maximum number of attempted contacts which can occur. A contact attempt in ACE is defined as a letter, a call, an email, or a text. Your agency can define the individual maximum contacts for each of the channels of communication below with these fields here. We have maximum connected calls, maximum letters, maximum emails, and maximum texts. Now these last three are pretty self-explanatory, but we will be going over what maximum connected calls means, the definition, and what that looks like. Most of you have more communication with your consumers than validation letters and demand letters. So how can you exclude certain types of communications from contributing to a contact attempt? We do have a new letter category or a new category that's on the profile of letters, emails, and texts to do so. So let's go check that out. We're going to go to a letter profile here. So we're going to go to Setup, Letters, and Profiles. And we're going to take a peek at a payment schedule letter. If you remember from our Phase 1 webinar or seen any of our release notes, we've already actually seen this category, so we've just added an additional one. In our Phase 1, we looked at this validation notice category and how is important for your validation notice letter profile. Today, we're going to be looking at this information letter category here. This category is intended for communication which is informational and should not be included as a contact attempt. Examples of these could be payment reminders or payment receipts. So when you need to send communication to your consumers, but it is not an attempt to collect, this is a great, you should have this letter category set up on your letter profile. One thing that's really helpful too is in the letter profiles here, a helpful tip is adding this letter category to your letter profiles here. So because you're going to need to go in and make changes to your current letter categories, I find that this is very helpful. Our default is going to be other, but you can see that by adding this category here, you can double check and make sure that your letter categories are correct. To add this column to your letter header, or letter table here, you're going to right click on your mouse and select category and hit apply. All right, let's go back to our setup and compliance screen here. And the next three that we're going to go over, maximum contacts, maximum right party contacts, and maximum connected calls, these are calculated from dialer codes or result codes you put on an account page. So we're going to be going back and forth between screens there. First, let's look at maximum contacts. Maximum contacts are defined as how many times you can contact the consumer. So let's go look at the dialer codes which are associated with a contact. I've set up a sample dialer vendor here. So let's go to Setup, Vendors, and Dialer. Okay, I'm going to go to my sample dialer vendor. And down here at the bottom, we're going to look at these dialer codes. And we're going to be focusing on this column here, phone result contact type. We're going to see some connections between this column here and what appears on the account page. So let's go to one answered. We're just going to check this one out. And when we're talking about contacts, we're going to look at this drop down here called phone result contact type. And you can see that there is a one of these populated here. So all of these in this column are going to, when a dialer code is associated with any of these phone result contact types, the call will be considered a contact. Similarly, we can go to an account page and see what it looks like when it's inputted there. Oops. Oh, they're both restricted. All right. So let's see the, we're going to go to the result contact here. And in the dropdown, and you'll notice that these are exactly the same. So when you're inputting a call on an account page, any of these results here will be considered a contact. All right, let's go back to our setup and compliance here. And we're going to look at the next one called maximum right party contacts. A right party contact is defined as a contact result being either primary or right party. So again, this is reflected by a specific field. Go back to our account here. So this is referring to this specific field here called contact. And when we look at this drop-down menu, it's going to be two results from this drop-down, which is going to be primary and right party. Now, if you're pretty much just using dialer codes, it's going to reflect the same on the dialer side. All right, and let's go back to our setup and compliance here. And we're going to look at maximum connected calls next. A connected call is defined as a call which rings a phone number to any contact type, meaning primary, right party, or otherwise, but does not include busy signals, out of order phones, or wrong numbers. So we can go look at our account, back to our account page, and see how these tie back. So for this, we're going to be looking at two fields here, result contact and result no contact, because both of these contain results that may be considered a connected call. So a connected call is going to include all of these in the result contact dropdown. It is also going to include no answer, but a connected call will not be considered if it is out of service, wrong number, or busy. We're going to go back to our setup and compliance screen here. So now we've made it through all of our contact window fields here, and we're going to take a peek at some of the other restricted account settings on this page. So in addition to the in-window contact stuff, there are some other ways you can restrict accounts, and that's going to be by account status code groups, account statuses, and then down here at the bottom, we already went through this, which means that the in-window feature is turned on, but you can also restrict accounts which are inside the validation notice period. If the consumer is a litigious debtor, if there is an account attorney present, or if the account is illegal. So these are all ways that you can restrict accounts. So what happens when any of these criteria are reached, whether it's the restricted account criteria or the in window? Let's go back to an account and check it out. All right, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that we have this pop-up window here that reads, "This account is restricted. Do not contact the consumer without special permission." And we're going to talk about the permission a little bit later because there is an override. The second thing you're going to notice is that there is a restricted PIL here in the summary section. The other things that are going to be restricted is your easy contact features. So that's going to be your click to dial and your ability to send in opt-in messages for email and text. So up here, normally, if you can remember, on an account page, normally if you have click to dial, you have some icons here that are set up and they are currently not present. We can also go to the email here, scroll down. And you'll notice that there is no button to send in opt-in request. And lastly, in our phones here, there is no option to send a text message. So those are going to be the things that are going to be turned off with this. In the future, we do have plans to release features that are going to be able to configure restrictions more in depth. Let's see if we can go find an account here that's not restricted. Okay, so here's an account that is currently not restricted, and you'll notice that my icons are here. And I'm just going to go to one of these other two features. And you'll notice that there is a send in opt-in request here. So when the account is restricted, these will not appear. Okay, so let's talk about that permission. Admins are going to automatically be receiving the override permission for this feature, and we're going to go take a peek at that. So let's go to Setup, Users, and Profiles. And I'm going to pull up my admin profile. Now I currently have this override removed from this profile, so I can show you what it looks like when they are not um, when it's restricted and you do not have the permission, but typically it would be in this administrator role down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go into add and show you what the permission role is named. Or if you would like to have another user to have an override permission, then you would want to create a standalone role and add this permission to it. So I'll show you what it is named as. I'm going to go to add here, and we're going to bump this way open. And it is located on the second page, and I really like to use the control find in here. And the permission is called restricted account override. So if you would like to still be able to, even though the account is restricted, place phone calls and send those opt-ins and things of that nature, you're going to want to make sure that you have this restricted account override permission, or if you're an admin, you'll have it automatically. I bet you're wondering, is there workflow that I can help with restricted accounts? And the answer is absolutely. We have one easy way to do that. That's going to be in our work list features. So we're going to go to workflow and work lists, and we can go to any work list. And in our rules section, we have a new field here called work restricted accounts, and you'll notice that it's turned off. With this feature off, your work list builder will not include restricted accounts in the work list build, so this is going to be a really easy way to kind of put those restricted accounts to the side. Additionally, we're going to have all these new fields exposed to the summary section, logic blocks. You can use them in action paths, SQL Designer, preferred vendor files, templates for letters, emails, texts, you name it. So these fields are going to be available for you. We're going to go take a peek at a logic block so I can show you what the naming convention for these fields is. So let's go to workflow and logic blocks. And I have a little sample one set up here called restricted accounts. And you'll notice I have a couple down here already, but this one is just account restricted set to true. So even with this logic block and an action path, you could do quite a bit with that. But we're going to go to this add field because these contact window fields have a specific naming convention, and they all begin with in window. And you'll see we have all these fields here: in window all contacts, in window connected calls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have all these fields available for you to create logic conditions for. I also want to show you how you can utilize them in a summary section. Let's go to an account that has some restrictions here. So I have added a few fields here to the summary section. I have added in-window letter sent, in-window text sent, in-window email sent, and in-window connected calls. By having some of these in-window fields in your summary section, especially for your restricted accounts, it may help you easily see why the account is restricted without having to go through any of the logs. So let's go ahead and add another field here to our summary section. Again, they're all going to start with in window. And we can do account in window, all contact attempts. That's a good one. All right, so one of the last important things that I want to talk about the in window fields is the job that executes all of this. So the calculation and resetting of these contact window fields are executed by your launch date triggers job. Let's go to utilities and jobs. And we're going to go into our launch date triggers here. Okay, so you'll notice down here at the bottom we have this refresh contact window statistics. This is the job task that is executing the restricted in window fields. So when the restricted in window fields haven't been updated within 7 days, they will be automatically cleared when the launch date trigger job is scheduled to run. However, if you do need to refresh all in window fields again on a particular date, you can set up a standalone job with this refresh contact window statistics job and rerun that. It's not likely that you'll probably need to do that, but if you do, you'll want to make sure that you set up the task in a standalone job. All right, so that is the end of our content and what we have rolled out here in phase 2 of our new compliance screen. So before we jump to the Q&A, I do want to talk about the phase 3 topics that we have coming out on 11/7. And any of the information regarding our ACE development plans and expected release dates can be found in our ACE development plans document. But we are going to be releasing preferred time window to receive calls and our itemization groups and sub-bundle groups. All right, so now that we have gotten through all of our content here, let's go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A. If you don't mind keeping yourself, I'm going to mass unmute you all, but if you don't mind keeping yourself muted, except to ask some questions, then we can help reduce background noise. All right, here we go. Okay. I think you all should be unmuted at this point.
Does not appear to have worked.
Okay, let me try one more time here.
Hi.
Hello?
Yeah, hi. It works, but you have to also unmute yourself as well. So you
Yeah.
unmute us, and then we have to also unmute ourselves in order to speak.
Okay. There we go. All right, Greg, Cheryl, are you able to unmute yourselves?
Yep. I believe so, yep.
Okay, great. It looks like we had a few questions in the question log, but they seem to be all answered. Does anyone else have any questions?
There are a couple of questions in the chat submitted by.
Okay, let's look at the chat. I'm just looking at the.
I think we've got, oh, here's another one. With some state restrictions superseding these new Reg F, how will that override these settings? I think, Rosie, the answer is you'll be able to, we kind of set up this compliance window so that you can define what those numbers are. So if your state restrictions are more restrictive, you can choose how many days to include in each of these contact window settings.
And just to follow up, we do have in one of the later phases the ability to specify specific states that will override your defaults here. But in the short run, you'll just have to restrict to your most restrictive state until we get that out, which I believe is in January or February. That's when that's slated.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We don't have very many questions this time. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Can you go over the pop-up how it works? Is it going off of this contact window settings?
That is correct. So whether it's contact window or these restricted account settings down here below, if any of these are met, that's where you're going to see that pop-up occur. Let's see, I think this account is restricted here. And that's when you're going to get this pop-up window here, the pill here on the summary section, and then you'll have the kind of quick communication features turned off, like your quick to dial and the opt-in and out requests for emails and things of that nature.
So if we do have them on, and let's say we want to call someone back the same day, it already met that number one count, so it's gonna pop up after that first contact, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, so just one other question. So on the account that you just had up, the validation letter is not technically counting as an attempt, right? So like on your sort, you have, in window letter sent is 0, but your last letter sent was on 10/7 for a validation letter. I assume you don't have a restriction for that to count as a count?
I know that let's go to our letter profile here. The category is what's going to count it or not, and these are all sample accounts, so these could be a little bit funky because since they're sample data, I just manipulate them to show what I needed to show. It
Gotcha. Okay.
might not be right. So let's go back to letters and
Stephen?
profiles.
One of the things, just to try to address that a little bit, most of our customers wanted to have some flexibility to include that in their 7 and 7, even though it is not part of the Reg F requirement. And that's why there is an option there for maximum connected calls as a distinct criteria. But some folks might want contact attempts. So the letters are included in contact attempts, even though they don't have to be, if that makes some sense. Most of our customers, to avoid harassment, are going to want to include, and the ACA is recommending that people consider including other types of contacts in the attempts as well to again reduce that likelihood of harassment. So you kind of have a handful of different mechanisms to determine when you want that restricted.
Yep, understood. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah,
Thank you.
and again, if there is a letter, email, or text in your profile, if you do not want it to be considered, your category is going to want to be this information. That's the one you're going to want to use.
Now, in the event that we spoke with the consumer and we received permission to contact them within that window, is there a particular identifier in ACE that, besides the notes that you guys have for that purpose?
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. That is coming. That's one of the things coming up in the future. Greg, did you have anything else to add on that one?
Yep, that will be in the next webinar and the next release. So I have, it has been just completed in code, and we're in testing and quality assurance of it right now.
Okay, and that would basically override the restriction, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Well? Awesome.
Yes, and
Okay.
you'll have a setting in there for basically how long that override is good for. We're going to default it to 7 days. You will be able to select the preferred, or that we'll be able to select a date up until that point in time. And as soon as you make one contact attempt, it's going to automatically reset it. It's going to blank it out.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Does the override have to be done by the admin, or is this going to be an automated process?
It's a permission, so you will enable it for your agents most likely, for them to be able to set that additional contact override. And also in the next release, we'll be adding in the preferred contact windows as well. So that will allow you to specify what, if the consumer says, hey, you can only call me after, 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Wednesdays, we'll go over what that interface looks like.
So we are able to start using this for testing, or just to make sure we have everything ready by the time that deadline comes up.
Yes, each phase, when we're doing the webinars, after each of these phases have been released, the content in them. So you should be able to go in now and start working with and testing the features that are in this webinar.
Okay. Thanks.
And they should also correlate to the last set of release notes that we sent out last week.
Okay.
And if anybody is not getting release notes, please let us know, and we'll make sure to double check that you're on the list.
I apologize if you'd answered this, but as the restrictions, you will not be able to do it by client, right? This is just a holistic, like all-encompassing setting for the compliance tool.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Is there a need to do it by client by any chance?
I think
Nothing specific that I can think of. It was just on my list. I can't think of a regulatory reason to do that, so.
we definitely have clients that wouldn't fall under this that we need to contact. So from our standpoint, yes, I would think by client would be a good filter.
For ours
And
as well, for MinSec, so we have first party as well as third party.
Right.
We want to handle them a
Oh.
little bit differently.
so instead of having to set these for each client, would it make sense then to have some method of basically restricting those clients so that it didn't apply to them? Would that
Yeah.
be easier to manage?
I think if maybe in the client profile setting or something, even if it was, first party versus third party, and then they would apply that way potentially.
Yeah, just check a box to ignore compliance tool.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Great, we'll be sure to get that added in.
Thank you.
All right, we got any other questions hanging out there? All right, well, if we have no more questions, we'll probably go ahead and end our webinar early. And if you have any questions, we can please send them in to our help desk or check out our help desk for all the documentation we've been putting out. Cheryl's been heading a lot of those, so thank you, Cheryl, for all that documentation. Do we have any last questions before we end our session today?
I will follow up and just mention that it takes a little bit of time to get them out there. So the help docs associated with this particular webinar, I'm hoping to have out by sometime next week. So if you're not finding the information you're looking for, obviously feel free to reach out to support, but know that there will be some additional help docs on each of these growing body of topics soon.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Cheryl. And Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time. Please look out for our Phase 3 webinar, which will be in a couple of weeks. So at that, I will end the meeting here. Thank you so much for all attending.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks,
All right,
Victoria.
bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.